Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Bob's Live. This is our Christmas episode. So, next week, we're going to be having an episode of the Keep Growing podcast. So, this is our last Bob's Live episode of the year. And, I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas. And, of course, we've got a contest drawing coming up. So we're going to get to that in just a little bit. But first, I thought we would head out to the greenhouse to see what we have going on right now. Because we are already growing some plants for the upcoming spring season. So I thought we would go out and take a look at the very first batch of cuttings for 2023. Hello. Today I am down here at our field house greenhouse where we grow our items from rooted cuttings. So these are cuttings that we get in from outside the US and we stick them in soil and then grow roots on them and then they get transplanted. So let's take a look at some of the first cuttings that will be transplanted and become planters and hanging baskets for spring of 2023. So here we have the first crop of the year. This is what was planted in week 50. Or well, I should say stuck because they're not really planted. Each one of these is a little cutting that was taken off of a plant and then we stick it in the soil and we spray it with some rooting hormones that causes it to produce roots. So over the next few weeks, these plants will grow roots, and once they get big enough, they'll be transplanted. So this is Lobelia Techno Cobalt Blue, and it's part of a mix, so Spring Breeze mix, and it's going to go into a 12-inch basket. So where it's a larger basket size, it takes longer to grow. So a lot of our larger containers were growing and transplanting very early on in the season because it takes such a long time to grow them and produce them. So with a little batch of cuttings like this, it's kind of easy to do the math. There's 104 cuttings per tray, and each row is 8 trays. So I just did some quick math right here. We have 128 trays, so that's 13,312 cuttings. Somebody will have to check my math. But I think that's right. So yeah, roughly 13,000 cuttings right here in this one little area. So the cuttings we were looking at are all the way down there at that end of the greenhouse. And as you can see, we've got a lot of space in here for cuttings. So over the next few weeks, this greenhouse is going to start filling up, and then we'll start cycling crops of cuttings through here as we start growing and transplanting for the spring season. So we'll definitely be back down here to check on that later this spring. The middle section of this greenhouse down here at the field house is one of our older greenhouses here at Bob's. And we're still doing upgrades to it, so we just added these new concrete walkways this winter. But right here where I'm standing, we have some concrete that was dated when it was poured, so it's been here since February 21st, 1987. And just over on this side, we have poinsettias that are shipping out, so still not too late to get a poinsettia. Oh, 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 oh. There we go. um, yeah, so that is what's happening in the greenhouse right now. And I was kind of fumbling over finding the button there to click on. Um, Over the last few weeks since Thanksgiving, we've had a contest up on our website. And I sent it out by email. We've shared it on Facebook a few times. And then also, if you visited our website, we had a little banner at the top that you could click on and register for our contest. And what we're going to be doing is giving away a Bob's Market gift card. So, I have all of the entries right here in this Bob's Better Blooms container. And what I'm going to do is just give it a shake. And we'll pick a winner. So we had right around 200 entries. So let me reach in here. Oh, that was easy. Usually I end up picking like 5 or 6 of them up at once. And then I've got to try to sort out just one without looking. Okay, so our winner is... Let me bring the camera up here. There we go. You might be able to see it. Our winner is, of course, it's backwards, Kenny Buckley. So Kenny Buckley is the winner of our Bob's Market gift card. So I'll make sure I get in touch with him and get the gift card over to him. This week, before I end our Christmas show, I've got 2 more things for us, and one of those is kind of some late breaking news. Like, I literally learned about it like 10 minutes before the podcast started, so that was part of why there was a delay this evening. And that's because I had to go look up this information. But it has to do with one of our communities that we serve, which is our Gallipolis location. And if you've been down to Gallipolis, of course you know of Gallipolis in Lights. And I just saw this on a post right before I started Bob's Live this evening, so I had to work it in. But Gallipolis in Lights is going to be featured on the Today Show tomorrow morning. So they're going to be having a segment, I guess, called Merriest Main Streets. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be pretty awesome. I don't know, if you click on this video, I don't want to do it now because copyright and stuff, but I think this is some of the video that they're going to use for the segment. I'm not sure. It might be just what stock video WSAZ had. But yeah, if you haven't been down to check out the lights this year, I definitely recommend it. My wife and I, we went a couple weeks ago when we had one of those really beautiful evenings that was in like the 50s. And we could get out and walk around and really enjoy the park and check it out. Because it seems like for the last few years, every time my wife and I go down to look at the lights, it's always like 20 degrees and just outside. So we would get ice cream or something and then sit in the car with the heat on and watch the little light show where you can tune in to the radio station and listen to it. But yeah, being able to walk around this year and check out the lights, it was just absolutely beautiful. So yeah, if you get a chance, go down and check out Gallipolis in Lights. The other thing that I wanted to hit before we end the live stream this evening is our podcast. So, sort of resurrected the Keep Growing podcast for the wintertime because during the wintertime, it's kind of hard to get video of the greenhouse. This time of year we're starting to ramp up production, But right now there's cuttings and ferns and some seedlings, and that's about it. There's really not anything blooming yet, so there's just not a lot of wow type stuff to see out there. And especially trying to come up with segments for a gardening live stream every single week during the wintertime is kind of hard. Um, so, what we're going to do throughout the wintertime is every other week we're going to have an episode of Bob's Live, like this week. And then next Tuesday, we're going to have an episode of the Keep Growing podcast. So, if you're new to podcasts and you've never listened to podcasts, if you have a phone, so I've got my phone here, which right now I'm monitoring the Facebook feed of the live stream, so I can see the comments and everything. Um, but if you have a smartphone on Android, there's Google Podcasts, and on Apple, there's the Apple Podcast app. So if you head over to our website at bobsmarket.com/keepgrowing, that's where we have the page for the podcast. So there's a few different ways you can listen to the podcast. You can listen to episodes directly on our website. So, like right here is the newest episode that came out last week, which was titled A Fresh Start because it was our first new episode after 2 years. But also, up here at the top, you can subscribe to the mailing list. And what that is you'll get an email notification each time we post a new episode, which, due to RSS stuff and all that kind of weird computery stuff, the notification actually goes out the week after the podcast episode airs. And then also you can click through to the main podcast service where we host the podcast, and you can actually ask an audio question there that we can use on the podcast. But also, right up here at the top of the screen, we have all the different links to where we host the podcast. So we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Also, if you have Spotify, you can listen to the Keep Growing podcast there. Also, if you have Amazon Music, you can listen to it there, or you can ask Alexa to play the Keep Growing podcast, and it'll go off and find it, and hopefully it's the right one, and start playing it. And then we're also on iHeartRadio. And then, depending on your podcast app, this one's a little bit more technical, but you can enter the raw RSS feed and listen to it that way. So there's a lot of really, kind of out in the technical weeds podcast apps where you can just enter a feed from anywhere and it'll pull in new episodes. But also, like right here on the website, if I go down to this last episode, A Fresh Start, and click on it, it'll load a player up here at the top where you can click play and it'll start playing the episode. So there's multiple ways you can listen, and also subscribe to get information about all of the updates and everything with the podcast. So I really want to start trying to grow it, and it's kind of ironic. It's named the Keep Growing podcast, but I want to keep it growing. I think there's an opportunity there to really branch out and reach a new audience. So yeah, check out our podcast. And podcasts, it's something that I really enjoy. And if you're looking online for the podcast, this is what the cover for the podcast looks like if you're looking for it online. But yeah, I have like a 40-minute commute every day from my house up here to the office. So I subscribe to probably 20 or 30 different podcasts that I listen to. And, some of them I listen to every day. Some of them are like this podcast where an episode only comes out once every 2 weeks. But I do that, and then I also like to listen to audiobooks while I'm driving. So, yeah, if you have a long commute, check out podcasts. um, well, that is all that I have for our Christmas episode of Bob's Live. And, well, I will be seeing you in the new year. And, well, until then, keep growing.